Mets. He's Taz. It's the Metzger Tassel Show.
Hello, Tass.
Hey, long time.
Well, let me see if my colleague here can tell me if we're live.
If anybody's watching, just comment, please.
We've been having some difficulty. Sorry we're late. We are live. And okay, we're live. It's working.
Oh, good.
Now. Welcome, everybody.
Good.
Tass, I'm not going to ask you how you're doing again.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It is interesting. I think Tuesday, maybe it was Tuesday. Yesterday was Wednesday. So it must have been Tuesday. I think we had a conversation on Monday. You were talking to one of the directors and they had asked you permission to remove something. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, that'd be a really good topic to talk about. And then next thing I know, I see the topic. I literally I was picking up the phone to call you. When I grabbed my phone, I had a Facebook notification that came up with My Edge and what the topic was. I'm like, oh, he's already got it. We're already talking about it.
Right. That's correct.
That's funny.
So, hello, sir. Welcome. Who else is watching? Come on. Let the other 4 people show themselves.
That's right.
This is a good topic today.
It'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting conversation.
I wonder if we'll have enough viewers because people don't want to face the music on this topic potentially.
Could be.
And by the way, I'm waiting for some viewership to increase to tell you about the special guest we have in the office today.
Brian's there every day, man.
Okay, then you know what? I'll bring up somebody else that's a special guest in the office today.
Okay.
But have I ever introduced Mark?
No, I don't think so. That's
Okay.
a great time to do that.
See how
you didn't even bring the hands up.
I don't need to, Chris.
I know that was.
Yeah, he's gonna tell you don't bring the hands up there. You take the backhand, not the front.
We got GrowPro in the house, everybody.
What's up, everybody?
Chris Rodriguez.
Hello.
That's right. She's got like 30 free consultations. If you guys are interested, we'll put the link up here in a second.
Put up her cell number, will you?
Now, Chris, is your number 867-5309?
It is not.
Do you know whose number that is?
Jenny.
Jenny's
Oh,
number.
good.
Yes.
Good.
Jenny, who can I turn to?
Oh, man.
Thank you. I'm live.
This is why people don't tune in to like 10 minutes after we start because they know the first 10 minutes. Well, some of you that appreciate the humor are on early.
We're not here to just educate and inspire and motivate. We're here to entertain.
Oh, the edutainment line.
Listen, these people, these fine 15 people of our viewership audience, they got to teach classes tonight. They just need a little reprieve before go time. You know what I mean? Tess, go ahead. Finish reading that book real quick and then just come back.
I'm actually taking a nap because you're so boring.
Very good.
It's so funny. My camera is like way up here. And we were, I think it was on the summit, and I was looking online to see who was following, and Chris sends me a text of a picture of me. She goes, "Are you sleeping? Because this is what it looks like online." I'm like, no, I'm reading people's responses to what we're doing. So
very good. All right, so let's dive in here, everybody. I think our industry needs to come to terms with something, and that is, the big form debate, Kata's forms, right? Hello from Switzerland.
Hey.
And I love Switzerland, by the way. I skied in Davos, Switzerland, and absolutely loved it. I also love Zurich as well, but
he'll never go back.
I'm saying that right, Davos.
That's when he liked to when he didn't mind flying until
no.
prior to his traumatic experience flying.
I still minded it. Happy wife, happy life.
This is true.
But anyway, hey, we have this instinct, and I want to put things in perspective and look at both sides of this. Whether you're jujitsu, you're in Zurich, very good. whether you're jujitsu, it doesn't matter, right? But I'm talking about not just forms or katas, right? And the fights that go on in the karate world or the taekwondo world or the kempo world or any art that has forms or katas, where some people say, oh, it's just a waste. We're getting rid of them. Other people arguing, no, forms are good to have. I think both could be right. The problem with our industry, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, is I think whether you're doing just a drill or a form or a combination, do you get caught up teaching your students more about memorizing the pattern or the drill as opposed to understanding the application of the drill? And I'm just going to tell you, I visited, I would say 100 schools. I'm not going to say hundreds of schools, but if I think about it, it could be hundreds, but I'll say around 100 schools that I visited. The majority of them, including me back in the day, even as a student back in the day, until I realized it was more about memorization, right? And then we would test our students on, do they remember the pattern of which I want them to do the technique or the form or the drill more than the actual application? How many times do you find yourself saying other leg, no, other arm, grab the other arm, move the other arm, turn the other way? And then when they get through it, we're just so happy that they memorized it. But you could put your face down there, and if they were to kick or punch you or do something, like, there's no way it would be effective, right? So I think there's a discussion here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything to say about forms. I don't even know what forms
Yes.
are.
Come on, Taikyoko Shodan or Hwarang
Warong, yeah.
Yoku.
Yeah. That was a predecessor to the modern day warrior. Yeah. So listen, we had to memorize the names of the forms and what the means were. By the way, Wanung was visiting Earth, turned to, bear into a human, married her, and they had a kid named Dangun. You remember all those?
No, Tass.
You have no idea. So you did the Changhan forms, Chunji, Dangun, Dosan, all those, but you never had to read the story behind each of those?
No, Tass.
Oh, well, that would be fun for you.
I wasn't in that club. I only competed in fighting.
We had to memorize, speaking of memorization, we had to memorize like the meaning of the form, right? And even as a kid, I'm like, so a bear turned into a woman and he married her and they had a kid named Dangun. That's the name of this. This is weird. Like, even as a kid, I remember thinking it was weird. So listen, I'm in Taekwondo. I'm an old school Taekwondo guy, so I can talk poorly about it if I want to or have my opinion on it. There may be a lot of other Taekwondo people that are watching that have an opinion. And I've seen schools that have unbelievable students when it comes to forms, right? But it's because that's where they spend 80% of their time, is working on the memorization where it becomes ingrained as part of them. And I'm one of those guys. When I grew up coming through the ranks, we did 3 sets of forms. We did the Changhan forms, the Palge, and the Taeguk's. For every belt rank, I had to do 3 forms. No idea. I look back, I'm like, no idea how I got through all of that, because it wasn't really that fun. Now, there's an argument for adults. It's a moving meditation. They enjoy doing it, right? But I remember going from 3 sets of patterns to we're going to teach 1 set of patterns to we're not going to teach patterns until they get 3 belt ranks in, to we're only teaching 1 pattern to every student under black belt, to we're getting rid of patterns altogether. Like, anything and everything that you could think of, I did. And I always would come back to, somebody had made a comment one time. They said, General Che, General Che's big book, right, of all martial arts, Taekwondo, traditional Taekwondo. If it's not in this book, it doesn't exist. And I thought, man, how shallow is that? Like, if it's not in this book, then it doesn't exist. I mean, people will refer to that book as the martial art Taekwondo Bible as an example, right? And I understand all of that. But when I look through, and again, even as a kid, when I paged through this and I saw this technique and it was designed to deflect a flying sidekick coming at your face, I'm like, and then you look at different techniques where there's somebody standing on a chair and somebody down low, and you're like, this just doesn't, logically, this doesn't make sense. And then I remember trying to understand it a little bit deeper, right? Like, okay, let me go a little bit deeper. Maybe, and I think of the Last Samurai, the last scene of The Last Samurai, where you have all of these warriors on the field. So maybe this block, right? I'm trying to do the block so you can see. Maybe this block would have had merit on a battlefield, but it doesn't have any merit today. I mean, it's kind of like saying, well, there's no reason for us to have a Tesla today because we still have a horse and carriage that we can get around in. Like, we need to evolve. And I think everybody's mission, I would hope, there is the preservation of traditions, right? But then there's also the innovation and modernization of, well, are we going to leave our martial art better than how we found it? Are we going to innovate, or is it just going to be the same thing? We had a tournament this last week, and I was talking to another instructor that was there, and he was frustrated with the judging. And he's like, some of these guys are veterans. They've got 30 years experience. I said, the problem is they don't have 30 years experience. They have 30 years of the same year of experience over and over and over, and they never really grew over those 30 years. So trying to make sense of the form, the kata, then looking back at history and going, okay, well, why were these forms developed, right? In a lot of cases, the forms were developed for, discipline, like adults in a highly disciplined environment, right? Being the military, that's who they were designed for. They were never really designed for 7-year-old kids with ADHD, right? That's just not. Now, the argument could be, but if you can get those 7-year-olds with ADHD to learn them, they can become more focused. But we're not, in my opinion, we're not teaching the way that they want to learn, right? And sometimes we have to realize if we're not teaching the way they learn, you got to learn the way that say that again, they're not learning the way that we teach, then we have to teach the way that they learn, right? And I think that's been a big evolution for us over the years, and really understand what's the purpose behind forms. Right? Well, if the purpose behind forms is to understand rotation, to understand power, as an example, and you might say fluidity and balance and breath control and all those things, great. But is that the only way to do it? And we all need to realize, and I'm speaking from a Taekwondo world, we all need to realize it was a group of instructors that were sitting in a room that created these forms together 60, 70, 80 years ago, whatever it's been now, that they created those forms. How are we going to evolve and get to the next level? And I always thought it was interesting that Taekwondo specifically, 90% of all Taekwondo forms are all hand techniques. Well, that's because the founder of the whole style of Muay style of martial arts was actually a second-degree black belt in karate, not in Taekwondo. But if Taekwondo is predominantly a kicking art, why are we doing all these hand techniques? There's a lot of things that just didn't make sense to me, right? And so our mission, our goal is really to have our students be their absolute best and absolutely be able to defend themselves. I don't think anybody can say, if you do a big front stance with a low block, that's a defense against a front kick. There's better ways to defend against a front kick than to get in a big wide stance and to do a low block, right? That's my opinion. Now, some people will say, well, we keep the tradition because when they're in those deep stances, develop leg muscles so that they can kick harder, they can kick strong. I get all of that stuff. But I also see the message that people are sending, like, well, this block is, you're blocking someone that's coming over your head here and you're blocking somebody over here. It just doesn't make good logical sense to me in today's world. I think we need to modernize, right? That's my opinion.
Well, you're getting on the form example, right? Yeah. But memorization in general. So I walked into one of my schools a month ago or so, into an adult class, and I saw them doing a combination partner drills on a target, and they were beginner and intermediate adults, and they're throwing like a roundhouse, skip roundhouse, and then I'll give you a jujitsu example, right? So like a roundhouse, skip roundhouse kick, and I said to the instructor, I said, "Why are they doing that?" And he said, "Oh, because that's part of their curriculum." And I said, "But why are they doing a roundhouse kick?" He said, "Because that's one of the combinations they need to know." I said, "But why do we even make that one of the kicks we need to know? Why do we even throw a roundhouse kick?" And he said, I don't know. I said, "To hurt somebody." I said, "That's why you throw an attack, to hurt somebody." I said, "Why is it that I can take a pad away, put my face there, and let them do the kick on my face, and I'll be fine?" Because they're so focused on the memorization and just doing the motion that they're forgetting why they're even doing it in the first place. And I said this at the elite seminar, right? You can't forget. This is why you always have to think with the end in mind. You stay focused on what the end goal is. Everything that you're doing, you're doing all of these tasks in life, in business, in anything. You're doing something to ultimately get to an end result, but we forget sometimes the end result. So if you're throwing a roundhouse kick and you couldn't hurt, a 6-year-old if you kick them, and you're an adult, we are failing, right? We're failing. So then you got to think, well, what I said then, and what I said in my own school, right? I'm being transparent. As I said, I don't care if they just swing their leg as hard as they can. It looks absolutely sloppy, but I would never put my face there, because if they hit me with that, it would hurt. Start there so they understand the concept is to throw a technique, a kick, a punch, or whatever to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? If you're doing a drill, and I've seen this because, as you know, I train in Jiu-Jitsu. I got, just for credibility's sake, my brown belt in December in Jiu-Jitsu, but I've been doing it since 1995, right? No gi and then gi and all this stuff. But when you see people drill, and if somebody's like going like this and then do it, like if they want to do an arm lock from the mount or something, and they're grabbing the sleeve and they're grabbing the elbow, and then they put their hand and then they do this and they go like this, and then their partner goes, good. No, it's not good. No, it's not good, right? We're forgetting the point, because when you do that live, right, you're going to realize they're just going to pull their arm out. You're not even gripping strong enough. You're not cupping that hard enough. You're not moving quick enough. As soon as you go, if you're lifting your weight up, they're going to be out. We have to understand, again, what is the end game? And if you understand that, then you got to ask yourself, is there a better way to get the end result than the way we're doing it? Is there a more efficient, better, more interesting way to get what we want for our students, for our life, for our business, than the way we're doing it? And people have a very difficult time, especially when it's you. We have a hard time stepping back and looking at ourselves from afar and looking down, saying, man, we could do that a lot better, when you're just constantly looking outward. You got to look inward. And the way you do that is you got to step back and stop defending yourself so much, and let your defenses down. Be honest with yourself. And I'm telling you, you're going to go farther in everything you do, whether that's martial arts instruction, business, career, life, marriage, anything, right? So it's not just forms.
Right.
It's everything and anything that we do.
Yeah, 100%. I think the whole idea of, praise, correct, praise, which was taught years and years and years ago to instructors, has kind of gotten a little bit out of hand. And it's a hyperbole praise, like, there you go, and a high five. And sometimes there's a correction, kind of, and then there's not. But, don't do your students a disservice, or people a disservice, by just generalizing a praise, right? And this is something I taught my guys, like, don't tell them they're doing a good job if they're really not doing a good job. Now, you can find something like, hey,
you showed up today.
I was just going to say, I'm so glad you showed up today. Or, wow, I love your new glasses. Or, wow, your belt's tied right today. That's amazing. Now, when you do that, and then move in, but give them something concrete, because I'll never, and I think I've said this before, whether it was this show or a different thing that we were doing, but I'll never forget, years ago, man, I was 12 maybe, and we went to our local mall. We did a demonstration, and we had the pine boards, and I did a 2-board hammer fist break, and the boards didn't break, and I was frustrated, because I'm like, this is, like, for me at that time, right, I would do that all the time, and it was just, it didn't break. So I remember hitting it again, and I broke the boards next time, and I'm like, and I got done, I'm like, oh man, my freaking hand is killing me right now. I was 12. Well, then I had a junior Olympic training camp that we went to. It was a sparring weekend, all weekend long, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. My mother was notorious for always picking me up late. So it was the last day, the seminar was over, And I'm like, and then my instructor was sitting there. I literally remember the chair I was sitting in and a quote from Albert Einstein across from me at the exact spot that I was sitting. And I was talking about my hand. He looked at it. He's like, yeah, you need to get that checked out. He said, you know what I like about you, Shane? He's like, you went through the entire weekend. That happened Friday afternoon. You sparred all day Friday, all night Friday, all day Saturday, all morning Sunday. You never complained. He's like, I love that attitude about you. Well, how is it that I still remember that? Because it was a genuine compliment or comment or praise from an instructor that I looked up to. You know, we're all put in positions of leadership, whether you want to be or don't want to be, which is why you really have to be mindful about what it is that you're saying and what comes out of your mouth, because you never know what that one thing is that's going to change someone's life forever, right? And I think that's important. And ultimately, our goal is not about delivering fluff, but it's about delivering genuine praise when it's deserved. And there's got to be a balance of praise and correction and making sure that we're molding the students into what we want them to become. And some people argue technique doesn't matter. It's about building focus, building confidence, building self-discipline. But you can do both. You can have great martial artists and you can show them the way. I mean, look, Team Paul Mitchell is a great example. You know, I know we got Myocon coming up, and you know, Chris Rappolt will be there, and Team Paul Mitchell.
There's the plug. There you go. Nice segue. I like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
But if you meet any of those Team Paul Mitchell kids, they're the highest level performers that you're going to meet, and they're the most respectful people that you're going to meet. So they have both. They're great martial artists, but because that's the culture that they built, right? You know, and we were on the last, you know, vacation, right? We happened to see Haley, right? Haley Glass. And we had a great conversation with her, super respectful, great martial artist. And you can have both of those things, but sometimes we get, like you said, we do get caught up a lot on the memorization piece, and we forget, well, what's the why? What are we trying to accomplish? And is there a better way? And like you said, regardless of the career that you're in, whatever you do, the mission, the goal is always to find a better way, right? Make it better. That's how we evolve. That's how our planet evolves. Is there a better way to write an email today? Yes. It's called AI and called ChatGPT. Like, there's a way better way to do it, right?
Very genuine email.
You can, yes, but you can massage the email. You're not starting with a blank screen. We can get things done. Look, and to that comment, right? I just believe you can get things done way faster by using AI, right? And this is not an AI conversation. You can get things done way faster. Just like in martial arts, we have this foundation, this base. Well, how did we go? I'll never forget. We had instructor come in, traditional Kobudo guy, and he goes, "I'd break that freaking toothpick bow in half." Right? He didn't have an appreciation for the fancy, like, bow staff techniques that you see these top performers, the spins, the twists, and all this stuff. That's the art of martial arts. It may not be the martial of martial arts, but that's the art of martial arts. It's pretty incredible what these kids can accomplish. But that was his mindset because he was an old, you know, Kobudo guy, right? But without that base first, we wouldn't have had these kids and these people develop these high level, you know, martial arts skills with bow staff. So I believe there's definitely merit in tradition and having a base, but I believe it's all of our jobs to leave our art better than we found it. And unfortunately, I think there's instructors that are out there that know more than their students and are not willing to teach everything to their students. They hold back because they want to be better than them and they don't want to give everything. That's not the way you're going to help this martial art evolve past you and leave a legacy. It's about teaching everybody everything, and then they learn and they leave it, and it continues to grow and grow and grow. It's interesting to look at martial arts today versus 80 years ago, right? 50 years ago, 30 years ago, and how these different splices of martial arts have come to be in sport karate and weapons training. And it's pretty incredible what some of these people have accomplished. And so kudos to everybody before us to be able to give us the foundation and the framework to be able to do all these things. But dude, you know, jiu-jitsu today is a different world than it was 15 years ago.
Well, I was just gonna bring the same thing up. Like, here's the evolution. Do you think that, like, fighters in the UFC today would kill the fighters in the UFC 25 years ago, right? Now, yes, they would, because they've evolved. They've learned the art of mixed martial arts, which there was no such thing 25 years ago. There was no holds barred, right? But you were karate versus sambo, or this versus jujitsu, or whatever it was, boxing versus judo. Like they're versed, they've evolved, right? So schools now teach this mix of arts, right? It's evolved. However, I'd like to ask you guys a question. Put it in the chat box. I'm just curious. As a whole. Now, I'm saying I think the tougher have gotten tougher. But as a whole, as a society, as humans, do you think we're getting tougher or softer? I'm just curious. What's your take? Are we getting tougher or softer now? What do we have here? Welcome back, Kata.
Love it.
Vinny Barbarino.
Mr. Weaver, soft. He says we're getting soft.
We switched to CMA curriculum for our karate program when we joined you years ago and dropped the long forms in favor of the idea of shorter forms with more reps. I'm a fan. Okay, we think we're getting soft. We think we're getting softer. Soft. I mean, keep it coming. I mean, I'm real curious. Does anybody think that as a society that we're getting more thick-skinned or softer, more sensitive today? I mean, what's your take? I appreciate the three of you. I mean, it's not a trick question here. You're not going to be wrong. Just reach up to the keyboard, people, and just type in softer or harder. More sensitive today.
Look at that. That's what did it. Look at it. They just came pouring in. Soft. I think we're getting softer society. What more sensitive than skin?
And skin. Soft. Unfortunately, softer. Softer and sensitive. Sensitive. All right. So I agree 100%. As a matter of fact, do I have clinical trials and studies to back it up? No, I have life experience. You guys know, back in the day, I think, if you're old enough, when your ass went to a martial arts tournament, soccer tournament, or whatever, you either won or you lost. I mean, that was it, right? You can't do that today. You can't tell anybody, adult or kid, you lost. Train harder, because you're destroying my confidence. You know what I mean? It's just like we're ruining the society by catering to this stuff and not making people work harder for things. But again, it comes down to, what are we teaching people? And I said it applies everywhere. Memorization or application. Let's just take the school system for a minute. Elementary, middle, high school, college, right? You got to cram, you got to learn this stuff. You got to take a test and pass. If you really don't understand how what you're learning will apply to real life and why whatever it is we are learning is very important to real world situations, right? You're not going to remember it anyway. You're not going to remember it, right? But going back on the kata thing, now here's the controversy. This is just my thought. Not for everybody. Not for everybody, but I'm curious. Please weigh in. You could say, you're ridiculous, Metzger. I mean, that's not the first time. I got two people in here that say that all the time. But watch this. I believe a lot of people want to hold on to memorization or katas because that's the one thing that separates them from their students. When a student is physically better, faster, stronger, better technique, but you don't know this pattern. So you have to, I'm the master. So like that I have that. You have to come to me to learn this. And you're not a black belt until you know this pattern. And I believe that a lot of us as martial artists use that for those reasons more than what the reasons were to have katas or forms. Listen, here's the deal. Tonight, if you do forms, ask your class to do the form. Ask them to stay together. Whatever kata form combination you want. If they're not huffing and puffing and dripping in sweat when they're done, they didn't do it right. I memean, they didn't do it right, and they just kind of, go through the motions, and that's a pet peeve of mine, right? I don't like when people just go through the motions just to get to another belt, let's say, right? Because we memorize something. You can take an actor with zero martial arts experience, work on set with an actor for 2 months, and they can know all the memorization and maybe even perform it better than a student who's been training for 4 or 5 years at a school. That shouldn't be the case, right?
Are you salty and soft because you didn't learn your black belt forms, so you couldn't move any higher, or what's the deal with the forms?
In jiu-jitsu, yes. Because I was taught to just kind of, and now I'm paying for it.
Oh, no, you weren't, because I remember you told me a story, I think, Laborio, didn't you just do like literally a gripping drill, and you were like whining about your fingers being sore at the tips?
I said, Lebo, do your fingers ever feel normal again? Or when he showed me a technique and I'm doing the technique, and Lebo, who I love, Lebo's the best, legend, Lebo, he came over, whispered in my ear, and he goes, Mike, are you stupid? So that's praise. But by the way, go say that to your students and see how your retention goes. See the lawsuits that the parents put on you. That's the way we train. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm doing a technique. I'm grabbing with the wrong hand or something. And Lebo went over it and he literally said, Mike, are you stupid?
Oh my God. And did he say something about you whining about your fingers? Like, don't ever.
I don't know if I broke the tip of my finger or something. He goes, don't ever say that again and let anyone hear you complain about your finger. I'm like, yes, sir.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. I'm sure everyone has war stories, right? Like the old school 2.5-inch black belts, and instructors would chase the students around. They'd be having belt wars, and you'd have your little, 3/4-inch belt that's been handed down 16 times from other people before you. It's been dyed 4 different colors. It's flimsy, and the instructor has their like cardboard hard belt, and you're just getting whipped in the back with it, and you're trying to hit back, and you got this flimsy little belt like it's a noodle. Or my instructor carried around a Chenet, right? The 4 things of bamboo. And I was in the left side guarding stance in line, like 4 rows back, and he was cracking somebody. I looked back. He cracked me on top of the head, cracked me in the leg, dropped down, 50 knuckle push-ups. And yes, sir. And I was like 11 or 12 years old, right? And I wouldn't dream of telling my parents that. And then years later, there was an article, I think in MA Success, that someone wrote about the $20,000 stick, right? And how it's costing you students, it's costing you money. And of course, you can't go do those things in your school. So then you got to figure out, well, what can you do? If I can't carry the stick, if I can't beat people with a belt anymore, what can I do to toughen these people up and make them better? And ironically, right, we were on this cruise, and we went to this particular show in this cruise, and they segmented the hundreds of people in the audience in teams, team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They had team captains, and it was like a scavenger hunt essentially, right? But they were asking like, okay, you need to go bring back somebody's ID. So then people would be getting their IDs. Oh, we need a sock with a hole in it, right? And so people would be taking their socks off in the audience, giving it to them. And I remember looking at Metzger at some point. I'm like, dude, I just can't believe how people just like are followers, right? But it's all about being competitive. And so, I mean, this is what I do. We both do all the time, right? But whenever I'm somewhere, I always look at the business lesson. I'm thinking, every single martial art class has to be a competition. I'm not saying go find your parents' driver's license and bring it to us, or find a sock with a hole in it. But I'm talking about, all right, now we're going to see who's got the best stance. And I promise you're going to have people be in the best stances because you're isolating that particular technique, and people are competitive. So if you want to develop better students, right, just an instructor pro tip, really focus on the competitiveness in class. And by the way, we were on the cruise, all the teams were getting points. Well, do you know what the winning team won at the end of this whole debacle? They won a can koozie. It's not about the points. It's not about the prize. It's just simply about getting people engaged. And I think if you do that, you could bring someone up at the end of class and say, you're the all-star stance, master for the day, or whatever it is, and just be excited about it. But you're going to have the rising tide lift all the boats because you're being competitive in class. And some of us, we say, well, I could never figure this out with my kids with soccer. the coach would yell and yell, and they're chasing the ball around the field. And I'm like, my son always wanted to go back and play. My daughter always wanted to go back and play. But it's because they scrimmaged every practice, right? They did scrimmages, drills plus scrimmage. Then they had games every week, a couple times a week. Well, what's the game for us in martial arts? Well, that could be a tournament. But do you find sometimes more people spend more time prepping for a tournament than they do for a test? So if we can take that concept of a tournament or a test where it's competition, but make every single class that way, where we're competing to have the best stance, the strongest technique, the most intense, the fastest, all of those things, you'll start to build much better students in your classroom. And it's not done necessarily through memorization, right? Which is this whole concept. It's done through a competitive nature, but having fun with it and recognizing the people that are doing a great job.
Here's the difference. Here's the difference. I just pulled up a random video, but everybody take a look. And by the way, Mr. Kevin, he is a true martial artist, phenomenal martial artist, great school owner, fights in karate combat, like just high level, performs the art side in NASCA and wins grand champion. But look at the difference here. Look at this little girl, right?
Yeah.
This is an example of application as well as combos, right? But look at the application. Do your students look like this? Now, you might say, well, that's one person. Do you have one girl that is probably 7 years old that looks like that, right? Now, when you talk about competitiveness, it could be, okay, we're basic. Get a partner. We're going to see who can hit who can kick the target the most in 30 seconds, and your partner's going to count. Or we're going to be walking around the room. You got to be blasting the target. I don't care if it's a hook punch, an uppercut, a jab, a roundhouse kick, a side kick, whatever you're doing. And we're going to listen to see who has the loudest sound on the target, who is hitting it the hardest. And we're going to be walking. Now, as you're walking, they're sweating. They're dying. Why? Because they're giving it all they can as we're walking around. We're listening for the sound, and they're just kicking as hard as they can. And we got to do the other way, or they're throwing a punch. Or we're going to see who could throw this hand combination the fastest. We're going to be walking around seeing you got to be exposed. Pow, 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 pow. Pow, 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 pow. And we're going to see who's the fastest, right? Same thing with jiu-jitsu. Like, we're going to be seeing who's doing the sweep and the counter and the reverse as fast as you can. We're going to be seeing who's doing it, who looks clean. I mean, we are by nature competitive, and that is a lot more fun, everybody, than 1, 2.
Dude, it's not. It's each,
Ni, san,
on,
three.
ono, no, se.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Yeah, we've been through all of it. I've learned languages. My foreign language proficiency came from all the martial arts that I've taken.
That's right.
I can't beat anyone up, but boy, I can count in Korean, Japanese, American, Spanish. The instructor would switch it. Disguise repetition. So it'd be uno, dos.
Oh my God.
And we've done it all, right?
Yeah.
You got to remember the end game, everybody. You got to remember the end game. We got to build better martial artists. We got to get tougher skin, and we got to let our defenses down, because as we are by nature competitive, we are also by nature self-defenders as people. If somebody attacks our character or attacks what we do or how we're doing it, instinct is to defend the point, as opposed to stop a minute and say, does this person have a point?
Right.
Are they right? Let me just process for a second. But people have a very difficult time doing that.
And well, people in general, and especially people in our industry, just because martial arts by nature, martial arts school owners and instructors there's an ego, right? They got a black belt, and there's an ego there. And that's not everybody, right? And I typically find, there's always exceptions, but the higher rank the individual, the less ego that you find, right?
I don't know. Oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
Right.
You go to an MMA gym, everybody's shaking hands, smiling. You go to a karate point tournament, everyone's mean mugging.
Yeah.
Weird.
It is. It's bizarre.
But Ernie said he was a great instructor.
He said he feels he was a great instructor, so he can feel however he wants to, but we know that.
Let's talk about Ernie a minute as an instructor as far as soft goes.
So you had your instructor. I mean, you were disciplined how when you were a kid? from your martial arts instructor?
Me?
Yeah. Low kicks?
No, man, listen, look, I was a pretty hard worker. The discipline came from, I remember taking a test once. They made us get into a deep horse stance. There had to be 70 to 80 people testing. We go through the entire test. We had to get in a deep horse stance and stay in that stance until they graded all the papers. And if we got out of the stance, you failed. So that's where the discipline came in. It was just hardcore training. I mean, so I wasn't disciplined because I worked hard, you know?
Well, someone will correct my Korean, but this is the name I remember it by. It was called Pago, I think is what it was called. But you do the splits, you put your hands behind your back and you put your forehead on the ground. And what would happen is all the blood would rush to your head and you'd be like, oh my God, it hurts. And then you lean back, which would force your splits to go down further. And then your legs would hurt. And then you put your weight back on your forehead. This was like a whole Korean discipline thing. The belt thing, the Shanae was another one. But that's not what Palesko did. Palesko just grabbed the kid by their hair and dragged him across the mat.
And threw him in an office and shut the door on him because they were being disrespectful.
That's right. That's right.
What he
I
did.
think another kid didn't another kid have to do push-ups and they forgot about him?
That are you talking about Peterman?
Yeah.
Wasn't push-ups, it was sparring adults.
No sparring.
Yeah, he was like 12.
Yeah.
Just spar these adults. These adults rotate. We kind of forgot about him. Next thing you know, an hour and 20 minutes later, he comes in the office crying, everybody, if you know Peterman. But he was little. He was probably he's probably 11. And we're like, what's the matter? Did you get hurt? He's like, can I just take a break? Because he didn't stop. If you were told to spar and rotate every minute, you do that until we say stop. Unless you're instructors like us who got caught up talking about movies and, you know, what's going on. That was a Saturday, I remember.
Oh my God.
But the other thing Ernie did, you know, which you can't do today, he had an adult class. I went to visit him. He was teaching. I went to visit him to see his school, you know, go by the school. And he's doing an adult class and they're doing drills. And he sat everyone down. He goes, you guys suck. He goes, we're done for the day. You're going to sit here now until I dismiss you. Don't ever come back to my school if you're going to put in that kind of effort. He came in the office, sat with me for about 35 minutes. He goes, I got to go dismiss him. He goes, you're dismissed. Don't come back if you're going to perform like that. And that was the class.
And that was an adult class.
That was an adult class.
Oh, man.
They went out of business. Ernie went out of business.
Oh, I wonder why.
Actually, that was a successful school. But if you did that today, you wouldn't be in business. And by the way, Palesko's saying Peterman's very tough now.
It's very true.
One of the toughest. He can hang with anybody.
Very true.
Anyway, guys, it's our responsibility, right?
But, you know, as we have the tough conversation, right, the softer and who's getting harder, softer, here's what I would tell you. If you're inspired and you're motivated, you go back to your school and you're like, I got to be tough, right? There's old school tough. Just be very careful. But here's the thing. I say you can be tough, not physically tough as far as touching people, hitting people, dragging them across the floor, those types of things. But you can work them out physically. You can be tough as far as discipline. But here's the difference between discipline and punishment. Discipline's done out of love, punishment's not, right? So as you're teaching, I always make sure that if I'm disciplining somebody in class, it's that circle, that loop is always closed with love, and they leave there knowing that they're better today because of it. Not like, oh my God, I did a horrible job in class today, right? So it's okay to get on people, but then you got to loop it back around, make sure that they understand the lesson. And when I say obviously close with love, I mean, please understand that, right? The high fives, the whatever, the knuckles at the end of class, whatever it may be. Because that's the difference where someone's presentation is coming across as just being mean and belligerent versus they actually care about the student and the person that's there. And I believe that we all do care about our students and we all do care about their success, whether it's in martial arts or life. And, you know, I say this a lot as well. You don't have a money problem in your school. You have a relationship problem. And if you can fix the relationships that you have with your students by showing that you care, listening to them, hearing them. And when people come to you and say, well, how did you remember that about me? It's because you're taking an inventory. So If you're a team member watching, right, or you're an owner watching, are you literally just there to check the box to teach from 4 to 8? Or are you really there and you understand your students, you know who they are, you know about their lives, you ask about their lives, and those things definitely go a long way with your students and can also inspire them because they do know how much you care. And this was said years ago. People could care less how much you know until they know how much you care, which is why the trophies in the windows, the medals on the wall don't mean anything if you don't care about that particular student and care about your students in your school.
And by the way, there's people watching there that are probably rolling their eyes saying, of course we know that, of course, but you don't practice it enough or efficiently. You got to be conscious of that stuff. And the last thing I'll say is, if you're being tough on your students, just keep reminding them why, and keep asking them, why did they want to train in martial arts in the first place? And your job is to make sure that they become the best version of themselves. And I got to push you. I got to push you to do that. And it's not easy to be great in anything. It's not easy. You got to put the work in, right?
By the way, those students that stay for a while, their reasons why may change. So just remember that as well. Host is leaving the broadcast. So remember that as well. They may have come in for confidence, but now they may have all the confidence in the world, and now they're looking for a better workout. They're looking at how to defend themselves. They want to, go to turn. So always be engaged and know what is it. Have things changed? Have they gotten that goal? Now they want something different. And that's how you keep students for a long time in your school.
Right. Well, there it is, everybody. Application, memorization, know why you're doing what you're doing, and make sure your students are reminded on why they're doing what they're doing. So
right on.
With that, thank you, Tass. It's always a pleasure.
No, the pleasure. Do itashimashite. Let's go. The pleasure's mine.
Thank you. All right, man.
All right, everybody. We'll see everybody later. Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.